My wife's coffin waited, her life of devotion to our family extinguished. But my son? He spat venom, snarling. Her funeral's worthless next to my wife's 30th birthday spectacle. Those words slashed through me. A Canadian veteran forged in Afghanistan's fire, more brutal than any shrapnel, more devastating than any defeat. My heart bled, the pain so raw I could barely stand, betrayed by my own son, who swapped his mother's last honor for a glitzy gala. This outrage will ignite your fury. Smash that subscribe button, and let's plunge into the torment of this betrayal together. I stood in our Victoria home, adjusting my old Canadian Forces regimental tie, the Salish Sea glinting through the window. Eleanor's knitting basket sat untouched on the coffee table, her half-finished scarf a painful reminder of her absence. She was gone, my wife of 40 years, a nurse who poured her heart into supporting veterans' families at CFB Esquimalt. Cancer stole her 3 weeks ago, leaving a void in our cedar-shingled house on Dallas Road. Her laughter once filled this 500-square-foot space, now silent except for the tick of her grandmother's clock. I traced my fingers over her favorite mug, still warm from my morning coffee, as memories flooded back. Eleanor bandaging my wounds after Afghanistan, her gentle voice promising we'd rebuild together. Our son, Liam, was her pride. We'd scraped together every dollar, $500,000 for his tech startup in Vancouver, $200,000 for his False Creek condo, sacrificing our savings and my veteran's pension. "He's our future," Eleanor would say, her eyes bright, even during chemo. But Liam's calls grew rare, his visits rarer. Sophie, his wife, preferred gala dinners to our quiet Sunday roasts. "Dad, we're slammed with work," Liam said last month, his voice distant over the phone. I believed him then. Now, clutching the funeral program for Eleanor at Ross Bay Cemetery, I wondered if I'd raised a stranger. Maggie, Eleanor's sister, called out, "You okay, David?" Her voice trembled. I nodded, hiding the ache, knowing the truth about Liam would break her too. The morning of Eleanor's funeral broke cold and gray over Victoria, the Salish Sea churning restlessly beyond our home on Dallas Road. At 7:30 a.m., I stood in the kitchen, my hands shaking as I dialed Liam's number. My regimental tie felt like a noose, the weight of the day pressing against my chest. Eleanor's absence was everywhere. Her favorite cast-iron skillet still sat on the stove, untouched since her last batch of blueberry pancakes. 4 rings echoed, then Liam's voice cut through, groggy and impatient. "Dad, it's early. What's up?" Loud music pulsed in the background, a bass line thumping like a heartbeat. Sophie's voice shrieked, "Liam, the caterers need the deposit for the yacht." My stomach twisted. "Liam, your mother's funeral is at 11:30 today at Ross Bay Cemetery," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You're listed as a pallbearer." Silence. Then Liam cleared his throat. "Dad, I told you, Sophie's 30th birthday party is tonight. We've been planning it for months. $20,000 on a yacht in Vancouver Harbor, a live band, the works. It's a big deal." I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "Your mother's funeral, Liam. This is her final moment, once in a lifetime." His response was ice cold. "Mom's gone, Dad. She's not coming back. But Sophie's birthday? It's a milestone. You get it, right? Family first." The word family from his mouth felt like a slap. I stared at Eleanor's funeral program on the counter, her smiling face printed beside the order of service. "Eleanor raised you for 35 years, Liam," I said, my voice cracking. "She worked double shifts at CFB Esquimalt's clinic to fund your dreams." Liam sighed, impatient. "I appreciate that, Dad, but Sophie's stressed. The caterers are here, the band's setting up. I can't let her down on her big day." The line went dead. I stood frozen, the dial tone buzzing in my ear like a swarm of wasps. The kitchen clock ticked to 7:45 a.m. Eleanor's favorite daisy-patterned apron hung on the hook, mocking the emptiness of the house. I sank into a chair, my eyes falling on the wedding ring glinting on my finger. A simple band from our 1985 ceremony in a Victoria chapel. Eleanor had defended Liam until her final breath, even when he skipped her chemo appointments. "He's building his life, David," she'd whispered, her voice weak but warm. "Young couples need space." I'd believed her then, clung to her hope. Now, her words felt like a lie. I picked up the funeral program again, my pen trembling as I scratched Liam's name off the pallbearer list with slow, deliberate strokes. Each scratch was a cut to my heart, severing the bond I'd thought unbreakable. At Ross Bay Cemetery, the wind whipped through the cedar trees, carrying the scent of salt and sorrow. 27 people gathered to honor Eleanor, her nursing colleagues, our neighbors from Dallas Road, Maggie with her tear-streaked face. "Where's Liam?" Maggie asked, her voice sharp with worry. I swallowed the truth, my throat tight. "He's caught up with work." I lied, the words bitter as bile. The pastor spoke of love and legacy, but I barely heard him. I stood alone by Eleanor's polished oak casket, the empty space where Liam should have been screaming louder than the eulogy. Mrs. Callahan, Eleanor's friend from the Esquimalt Legion, squeezed my arm. "She was so proud of Liam," she whispered, "always bragging about his tech startup." I nodded, unable to speak, the weight of her pride crushing me. Eleanor had poured her soul into that boy, $500,000 for his Vancouver venture, $200,000 for his condo, countless nights worrying over his calls for emergency loans. I'd co-signed every debt, believing it was for family. Now, as the first shovelful of dirt hit Eleanor's casket, I saw the truth. Liam hadn't just betrayed her memory, he'd betrayed everything we'd built. Driving home along the Juan de Fuca Strait, the 10-kilometer stretch felt endless. Eleanor's empty passenger seat stared back at me, where she'd always sat, humming Gordon Lightfoot tunes. I turned off the radio when her favorite song, Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, started playing. Our quiet street in Victoria's James Bay neighborhood looked unchanged. Tidy lawns, maple trees, the life we'd carved out together. But inside, the silence was deafening. I hung my keys on Eleanor's hand-painted hook, each click a reminder of her absence. Sitting in my old recliner, I clutched her funeral program, Liam's scratched-out name, a wound that wouldn't heal. Maggie's voice echoed in my mind. "Where's Liam?" I had no answer, only rage and grief, knowing the son we raised valued a party over his mother's farewell. The wind howled through Ross Bay Cemetery, cutting through my black suit as I stood by Eleanor's casket, the polished oak gleaming under a gray Victoria sky. The pastor's voice droned on about eternal rest, but I couldn't hear it over the roaring void in my chest. 27 mourners huddled together, nurses from CFB Esquimalt, neighbors from Dallas Road, Maggie with her tear-soaked handkerchief, but the absence of Liam, my only son, was a wound deeper than any I'd taken in Afghanistan. "Where's Liam?" Maggie asked again, her voice sharp, eyes searching mine. I forced a smile, choking on the lie. "Work emergency," I muttered, the words tasting like ash. Maggie's frown deepened, but she didn't press. She didn't need to. The truth was a blade, and I was bleeding out. I stared at Eleanor's casket, her name carved in elegant script, and my mind spiraled back to her final days. In her hospital room, surrounded by get-well cards and wilting daisies, she'd gripped my hand, her voice barely a whisper. "David, don't let Liam forget what family means. Promise me." Her eyes, dull from chemo, still held that fierce love for our boy. I'd promised, believing I could keep it. Now, as the first clod of dirt hit the casket, that promise shattered. Liam hadn't just skipped her funeral for Sophie's $20,000 yacht party. He'd erased his mother's legacy, her 40 years of sacrifice, for a night of champagne and selfies. Back home, the silence of our 1,500 square foot house on Dallas Road was suffocating. I wandered into Eleanor's sewing room where her old singer machine sat, a half-stitched quilt draped over it like a shroud. My fingers brushed the fabric, and I collapsed into her chair, the scent of her lavender lotion lingering in the air. That's when I found her journal, tucked under a pile of fabric swatches. Its leather cover was worn, the pages filled with her neat handwriting. I opened it, my hands trembling, and read her final entry, dated a week before her death. Liam hasn't called in months. We gave him everything: $500,000 for his startup, $200,000 for his condo, my overtime hours, David's pension. I fear he loves our money more than us. My heart breaks, but I still hope he'll come back to us. Each word was a dagger. Eleanor had known. She'd seen Liam's heart drifting, seduced by Sophie's glitzy world, but she'd clung to hope, even as cancer consumed her. I flipped through the journal, finding lists of sacrifices. $50,000 for Liam's wedding at the Fairmont Empress, $15,000 for Sophie's failed boutique, $10,000 for their Whistler ski trips. Every entry ended with her love for him, our brilliant boy. She'd written beside his university graduation photo, paid for with her double shifts and my weekend contracts. I'd co-signed every loan, believing it was for family, for the future Eleanor dreamed of. Now, those dreams lay buried with her. I clutched the journal, my chest heaving, tears burning my eyes. As a veteran, I'd faced death in Kandahar, comrades lost, missions failed, but nothing compared to this betrayal. Liam hadn't just abandoned Eleanor's funeral. He'd abandoned her life's work, her love, her faith in him. I stumbled to the living room, where our wedding photo hung above the fireplace, Eleanor at 25, radiant in her lace dress, me in my dress uniform, promising forever in a Victoria chapel. We'd built everything for Liam, scraping by on $30 dinners at White Spot while he chased his tech empire. And he repaid us with a phone call, dismissing his mother's death for a party. Maggie called at 8 p.m., her voice thick with worry. "David, is Liam okay? He didn't show up." Eleanor would be devastated. I gripped the phone, unable to lie again. "He chose Sophie's birthday, Maggie. A yacht in Vancouver Harbor." Silence stretched between us, her gasp audible. "How could he?" she whispered. I had no answer. The clock ticked past 8:15, each second heavier than the last. I looked at Eleanor's journal again, her final words searing my soul. Don't let him forget. But he had forgotten her, forgotten us. The pain was unbearable, a raw, gaping wound that no battlefield medic could stitch. I sat in the dark, alone, the weight of my broken promise to Eleanor crushing me, knowing the son we raised was lost to us forever. The darkness of that Victoria night pressed against the windows of our Dallas Road home, but inside, something shifted. I sat at my old oak desk, surrounded by my Canadian Forces medals pinned to the wall, a bronze star from Afghanistan, a sacrifice medal, reminders of battles I'd fought and won. Eleanor's journal lay open before me, her words a haunting indictment. "I fear Liam loves our money more than us." My grief hardened into resolve, the kind I'd felt leading troops under fire. Liam's betrayal at Eleanor's funeral wasn't just a wound, it was a call to action. I wouldn't let her memory be disgraced by a son who valued a $20,000 yacht party over her casket. I pulled out my laptop, the screen's glow casting shadows across Eleanor's daisy-patterned curtains. With a veteran's precision, I opened our bank records, each transaction a testament to our sacrifices. $500,000 for Liam's tech startup in Vancouver, $200,000 for his False Creek condo, $50,000 for his wedding at the Fairmont Empress, $15,000 for Sophie's failed boutique, $765,000 in total, drained from Eleanor's overtime at CFB Esquimalt and my pension. Every dollar was a piece of our lives, given in love, now mocked by Liam's absence at Ross Bay Cemetery. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed a number I hadn't called in years. Emma Chen, our family lawyer in downtown Victoria. David, it's late. Emma's voice crackled through the phone at 9 p.m. What's wrong? I took a breath, steadying myself. I need you to rewrite my will, Emma. Liam's out. Every cent goes to a new fund, the Eleanor Sinclair Veterans Fund, for scholarships and cancer research. Silence hung heavy. Are you sure, David? This is big. My voice was steel. I've never been surer. Liam chose Sophie's birthday over his mother's funeral. He's no son of mine. Emma paused, then agreed to meet at her office on Government Street tomorrow. I hung up, feeling a clarity I hadn't known since Kandahar. The next morning, I drove the 5-kilometer stretch to Emma's office, the Salish Sea glittering under a rare February sun. Her office smelled of polished wood and coffee, a stark contrast to the chaos in my heart. I laid out the plan, my $2 million estate, including our Dallas Road home, would fund scholarships for veterans' kids and cancer research in Eleanor's name. Liam and Sophie would get nothing, not a dime, not a memory. Emma's pen scratched notes, her face a mix of respect and concern. This will change everything, David, she said. It's meant to, I replied, my voice low but firm. Back home, I called Liam at noon, the phone cold against my ear. Dad, what's up? He answered, Sophie's laughter echoing in the background. No more money, Liam, I said, cutting through his casual tone. No more loans, no more handouts. You're on your own. His voice sharpened. What? You're punishing me for one choice. Sophie's party was a big deal. I gripped the phone, my resolve unshaken. Your mother's funeral was a big deal, Liam. You chose a yacht over her casket. He stammered. Dad, come on, we can work this out. You've got millions. My response was ice. Not for you. Not anymore. I hung up, the silence in our 1,500 square foot house no longer oppressive but empowering. I walked to the fireplace, where Eleanor's wedding photo smiled down her at 25, radiant in lace, me in my dress uniform. I'm keeping my promise, love, I whispered. Liam won't forget what family means, not after this. My eyes fell on my bronze star, a reminder of duty. I'd fought for my country, for Eleanor, for our values. Now, I'd fight for her legacy. I opened my laptop again, drafting a plan for the Veterans Fund. $500,000 for scholarships, $300,000 for cancer research, the rest to maintain our home as a community hub after I'm gone. The pain of Liam's betrayal still burned, but it fueled me now. I wasn't just a grieving widower. I was a veteran taking back control, honoring Eleanor the way Liam never would. Word of Liam's betrayal spread like wildfire through Victoria's tight-knit veteran community, igniting a fury that matched my own. By the next afternoon, the Esquimalt Legion Hall, a 2,000 square foot sanctuary of polished wood and faded regimental flags, buzzed with whispers. I'd stop by for a coffee, my usual ritual since Eleanor's passing. when I overheard Colonel Harris, a grizzled Afghanistan vet, mutter to his table, "Liam Sinclair skipped his own mother's funeral for a yacht party. That's a disgrace to his parents' name." Heads nodded, faces hardened. I stayed silent, gripping my $2 Tim Hortons cup, the steam rising like my suppressed rage. Eleanor's memory, her years nursing veterans' families at CFB Esquimalt, deserved better than her son's callous choice. Within hours, the story hit the Victoria Legion's private Facebook group, a post by Maggie blazing across 500 members. Liam Sinclair chose his wife's $20,000 birthday bash over Eleanor's funeral at Ross Bay Cemetery. Shame on him. Comments poured in: veterans, spouses, locals who'd known Eleanor's kindness. "Unacceptable," wrote a retired sergeant. "Eleanor deserved better," posted a nurse from her old clinic. By evening, the post had 300 shares, spreading to Vancouver's tech circles, where Liam's startup thrived on ex-military investors. I drove home along Dallas Road, the 5-kilometer stretch of oceanfront glowing under a crimson sunset, unaware of the storm I'd unleashed. The next morning, Liam called, his voice frantic at 8 a.m. "Dad, what did you do? My investors are pulling out." Sophie's shouts echoed in the background. "Tell him to fix this." I stood in my study, my bronze star glinting on the wall, and kept my tone even. "I didn't do anything, Liam." "The truth did," he sputtered. "Maggie's post is everywhere. They're calling me a traitor to my family." I pictured Eleanor's journal, her fears about Liam's heart, and felt no pity. "You made your choice," I said, hanging up as Sophie's voice rose to a scream. The phone stayed silent, but the community's judgment was loud. By noon, Sophie faced her own reckoning. Her invitation to the Victoria Women's Charity Gala, a $5,000 a plate event at the Fairmont Empress, was rescinded with a curt email: "We prioritize attendees who uphold family values." Sophie's call to the organizer, a friend of Eleanor's, was met with icy disdain. "You supported Liam's choice to skip his mother's funeral," the organizer said. "That's not who we are." Sophie's social media, once filled with glitzy photos of her Vancouver lifestyle, now faced a barrage of comments from locals. "Shame on you both." I learned this from Maggie, who called at 2:00 p.m., her voice trembling but firm. "David, the community's rallying for Eleanor. They're cutting Liam off." At the Legion that evening, the air was thick with disapproval. Veterans I'd served with, men and women who valued duty above all, turned their backs when Liam's name came up. A retired captain, whose son died in Kandahar, spat out, "Eleanor nursed my wife through grief." Liam's actions are a slap to every veteran's sacrifice. I nodded, my throat tight, as the bartender slid me a free coffee. "For Eleanor," he said. The community's rejection wasn't just personal. It was a verdict, rooted in the values of loyalty and honor that bound us. Liam's tech world crumbled faster than I'd expected. By the next day, his lead investor, a former Navy officer, canceled a $100,000 deal, citing character concerns. Liam's networking lunch at the Victoria Chamber of Commerce was a disaster. Attendees left early, their handshakes cold. Sophie's boutique, already struggling, lost its last clients, locals who'd once admired her flair but now saw only her complicity. Driving past their False Creek condo that weekend, I saw a "for sale" sign, the $200,000 down payment I'd provided now a bitter memory. The community's wrath was relentless, a tidal wave washing away Liam's carefully curated life. I stood in my backyard, Eleanor's daisy garden blooming despite the February chill, and felt a grim satisfaction. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. served by the very people Eleanor had loved and served. The community's verdict was swift and unforgiving, a tidal wave crashing over Liam and Sophie's carefully curated lives in Victoria. 2 weeks after the Legion Hall whispers, their False Creek condo, bought with my $200,000 down payment, faced foreclosure. I'd withdrawn my mortgage guarantee the day after my call with Liam, and now, at 9 a.m. on a chilly March morning, a "For sale by auction" sign stood stark against the condo's sleek glass facade. The Victoria City Hall auction drew a small crowd, real estate sharks and curious locals, but Liam and Sophie stood apart, their faces pale under the overcast sky. I watched from my truck, parked 100 meters away on Belleville Street, my hand steady on the wheel. The auctioneer's voice boomed. "Opening bid, $650,000 for this one, 200 square foot condo." Liam's eyes darted, desperate, as bids climbed to $700,000. Sophie clutched his arm, her designer heels scuffing the pavement, whispering, "Do something, Liam." But there was nothing he could do. The gavel fell, and their home was gone. Back in Vancouver, their financial collapse accelerated. The bank repossessed Liam's $60,000 Tesla, its sleek frame towed away from their condo lot under the gaze of nosy neighbors. Sophie's credit cards, maxed out at $25,000 for her boutique and birthday bash, were frozen. "There's been a mistake," she shrieked at a Nordstrom cashier, her $500 purse slipping to the floor as the card declined. The cashier's pitying look was a knife twist. I heard this from Maggie, who called at 6 p.m., her voice a mix of sorrow and resolve. "David, Sophie's boutique closed today. They couldn't pay the $5,000 rent." I stood in my Dallas Road kitchen, Eleanor's daisy-patterned apron hanging nearby, and nodded silently. Justice wasn't sweet, it was necessary. Liam's tech startup, once his pride, crumbled under the weight of his tarnished name. His last investor, a retired Navy officer, pulled $150,000, citing ethical misalignment. Job interviews in Vancouver's tech hub ended in polite rejections, the story of Liam's absence from Eleanor's funeral preceding him like a scarlet letter. By mid-March, he was working the night shift at a Tim Hortons on Douglas Street, his $1,500 tailored suits traded for a $15 brown apron. Customers locals who'd known Eleanor whispered as he poured their $2 double-doubles. "That's the guy who skipped his mom's funeral," one said, loud enough for Liam to flinch. I saw it myself, stopping by for a coffee, my bronze star pinned to my jacket. Liam's eyes met mine, then dropped, shame carving lines into his face. Sophie's world unraveled faster. Her social circle, Victoria's elite, many tied to the Legion, shunned her. At a James Bay cafe, her former friends turned away when she entered, their silence louder than words. "I married into a respected family, not this disgrace," she screamed at Liam one evening, her voice carrying through their rented 800 square foot apartment. Maggie relayed the story, her call at 8 p.m. shaking with anger. "Sophie's leaving him, David. She's moving back to her parents in Kelowna." I stood by Eleanor's sewing room, her half-stitched quilt untouched, and felt no surprise. Sophie's loyalty was as shallow as her Instagram posts, now deleted after a flood of hateful comments. Their marriage buckled under the strain. By late March, Sophie packed her bags, her final words cutting deep. "I thought you were a Sinclair, Liam, but you're nothing without your dad's money." She left for Kelowna, her $10,000 engagement ring pawned for gas money. Liam stayed behind, alone in their cramped apartment, the lease unpaid at $2,000 a month. He called me at 9 p.m., his voice broken. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know it'd come to this." I stood in my study, Eleanor's journal opened to her final entry and kept my tone cold. You chose Sophie's party over your mother's grave, Liam. Choices have consequences. He sobbed. Please, Dad, just one more loan, $5,000 to get us through. I hung up, the silence of our 1,500 square foot home echoing my resolve. Driving past their old condo the next day, I saw movers hauling out furniture Eleanor's antique oak table, a wedding gift, sold for $200 at a garage sale. Neighbors watched, their pity reserved for Eleanor's memory, not Liam's downfall. The community's judgment, rooted in the values of duty and honor we'd upheld at CFB Esquimalt, had stripped them bare. I pulled into my driveway, Eleanor's daisy garden catching the spring light, and felt a grim peace. This wasn't cruelty. It was the reckoning Liam and Sophie had earned, a lesson Eleanor's love had tried to teach them, now enforced by the community she'd served. Spring arrived in Victoria, painting the Salish Sea with hues of emerald and gold, as I walked through Hatley Memorial Gardens, a bouquet of fresh daisies in my hand. Eleanor's polished granite headstone stood serene, her name etched beside the words, beloved wife and nurse. It was April, 4 months since her funeral at Ross Bay Cemetery, and the pain of Liam's betrayal still lingered, but something new stirred within me, peace, hard-earned and rooted in purpose. I knelt by her grave, the 1-hectare cemetery quiet except for the soft chirping of robins, and whispered, I kept my promise, love. Your legacy lives on. The Eleanor Sinclair Veterans Fund, seeded with $800,000 from our estate, had awarded 15 scholarships to children of veterans at CFB Esquimalt, each $10,000 grant a tribute to Eleanor's devotion to the military community. Another $200,000 funded cancer research, honoring her battle. I'd sold our Dallas Road home for $1, $2 million, the proceeds bolstering the fund, and moved into a modest 900 square foot condo near the Legion, where I volunteered weekly. My life had found new rhythm. Sundays were spent with Anne, a kind widow from my church group, her laughter warming the void Eleanor left. We'd walk the 5-kilometer Dallas Road Trail, her stories of teaching at Victoria High School blending with my memories of Afghanistan. The Legion became my second home, where I mentored young veterans, sharing tales of Eleanor's compassion over $2 coffees. Maggie called often, her voice lighter now. The fund's changing lives, David, she said at 7 p.m. last week, pride evident. Eleanor would be smiling. I stood by her sewing room, now a guest space, and nodded at her wedding photo on the wall. Eleanor at 25, radiant in lace, forever my anchor. Then came Liam. I was at the Tim Hortons on Douglas Street, ordering a $2 double-double, when he appeared behind the counter, his brown apron stained, his face gaunt. It was 8 a.m. A month after Sophie left him for Kelowna, their marriage dissolved in the wreckage of their condo foreclosure. His eyes met mine, no longer defiant but heavy with shame. Dad, he said, voice barely above a whisper, can we talk? I nodded, taking my coffee to a corner table. He sat across from me, hands trembling. I failed, Mom. I failed you. I thought Sophie's party was everything, but I was wrong. I see it now. His voice broke, tears welling. I stood by her grave last week, Dad. I read Mom's name, and it hit me what I threw away. I sipped my coffee, studying him. Liam's tailored suits were gone, replaced by a $15 thrift store jacket. His tech empire, built on our $500,000, was dust. He lived in a 400 square foot basement suite, scraping by on $15 an hour. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued, but I'm trying to change. I've been volunteering at the Esquimalt food bank, like Mom used to. I miss her. And you." His words echoed Eleanor's journal, her hope for his heart, but I wasn't ready to soften. "Prove it, Liam," I said, my voice steady, forged in Kandahar's resolve. "Not with words, with actions. Your mother deserved better than a son who forgot her." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I know. I'm trying, Dad. I'll keep trying." I stood, leaving a $5 tip, not for pity but for closure. "Take care, Liam," I said, walking out into the Victoria morning, the sea breeze sharp against my face. Back at my condo, I opened my laptop, reading emails from scholarship recipients. One, a young woman named Sarah, wrote, "Your wife's fund gave me a chance at nursing school. I'll honor her memory." I smiled, the first genuine one in months, feeling Eleanor's presence in every word. My life was full again, volunteering, Anne's companionship, the Legion's camaraderie. Liam's regret was real, but his path was his own now. I looked at Eleanor's photo, her daisies blooming in my memory, and whispered, "We did right by you, love." The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by a purpose that carried her name forward, stronger than ever. The Victoria sunset bathed Eleanor's daisy garden in a warm golden glow, the petals swaying gently in the spring breeze off the Salish Sea. I stood in my new 900 square foot condo's backyard, pruning shears in hand, tending to the flowers Eleanor loved. Each snip felt like a tribute to her, a quiet act of devotion that anchored my soul. 4 months had passed since her funeral at Ross Bay Cemetery, and the Eleanor Sinclair Veterans Fund now thrived. $800,000 transformed into 15 scholarships for veterans' children and $200,000 for cancer research, her legacy blooming brighter than ever. My life had found new meaning, volunteering at the Esquimalt Legion, sharing Sunday walks with Anne along the 5-kilometer Dallas Road Trail, and reading letters from scholarship recipients like Sarah, who'd carry Eleanor's compassion into nursing. Liam was rebuilding, working at Tim Hortons, volunteering at the food bank, his regret a seed that might one day grow. I'd kept my promise to Eleanor, honoring her with actions, not just words, in the way only a veteran understands duty above all. This journey taught me a truth forged in pain. Family isn't just blood, it's loyalty, shown through sacrifice and presence. As a Canadian veteran, I've learned that love demands tough choices, like those I made in Afghanistan or when I let Liam face his consequences. Honor those you love with your actions, not excuses, because that's what builds a legacy. If Eleanor's story and this lesson resonate with you, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Maple Revenge. Your stories of family and duty mean the world to us. Let's keep Eleanor's light shining together.